Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. We've got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right. Boy, the dominoes are falling. And that is how you spell dominoes. I looked it up on Google, so don't freak out on me. And the question is Harbaugh the next domino to fall? We've already had Nick Saban retire. Of course, his position's been filled by Kalen DeBoer. Now the question is, what is Jim Harbaugh going to do? And understand, there's 170 very good players, especially Alabama's roster, that are now possibly going to enter the transfer portal. Now, obviously, not all of them are going to do that. Let's not be silly. But some of them obviously will. Probably, 10, 20, 30 out of that 170. I would think several of the Washington, and I know some of the Alabama are going to do that. They're going to test the waters because maybe they didn't want to play for Coach DeBoer. That's not what they signed up for. They signed up to be coached by the GOAT.
It's about to go down, baby.
Or the Washington, they don't even know who their coach is going to be. So you're going to see a lot of this going on, and there's going to be a lot of movement. But the big question we've got right now is, what is Jim Harbaugh going to do?
It's got to be America's team.
And let's understand, this guy's been offered $125 million to stay at Michigan, and he's not signed the contract. He still has not signed the contract. They've been negotiating it for 2 months. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. He's also, let's pull up the article here. And before we get into this, I know what the Michigan people are going to do. They're going to come at me. Jim, what are you talking about? He's going to stick with us. Then why is he going on an interview? I don't think he should leave, and we're going to talk about that. But he's going on an interview for a reason. And he hasn't signed a $125 million contract for a reason. Doesn't make sense. And it talks about Jim Harbaugh is set to meet with the Chargers next week. It says Harbaugh has reportedly indicated he could leave Michigan to take over in L.A., and it makes a lot of sense. They got a great quarterback there. And here it talks about his 10-year, $125 million deal. But the caveat is he could not entertain or accept an NFL job this offseason. And he used to coach the San Francisco 49ers. He took them to the Super Bowl. He was an excellent coach in the NFL. And the Raiders are interested in him as well. But I don't think Mark Davis is smart enough to hire him. But anyway, let's talk about this for a minute. What I think he should do is stay with Michigan. Sign the $125 million contract. Go ahead and take the NCAA ramifications that are going to hit you, and there's going to be plenty of them. Look, Florida State just got hit with a 5-scholarship reduction, a 3-game suspension, and a 2-year show cause in their offensive coordinator over the fact he drove a guy to a restaurant to talk about NIL while the guy was in the portal. That's not tampering, and they still hit him with a 2-year show cause and 3-game suspension. In my understanding, he's going to stay at FSU, so really it's a 3-game suspension. I don't even know what the show cause even means anymore. But here's what I think they're going to do. They're probably going to give him a 1-year suspended deal where he can't coach for a year. You simply put your offensive coordinator who handled the Ohio State game in charge during that year. You're probably going to get a 3-year show cause. Michigan's going to completely ignore that. And you can come back the next year. Now, you are going to have probably some scholarship reductions, probably 25 to 30 scholarships. You're probably going to get a 10 or 12, $15 million fine, all that stuff. Because, look, there's no way around it. And when you say, there's no evidence, blah, blah, blah. When Michigan was going to sue the Big Ten over the 3-game suspension, they showed them the evidence, and Michigan said, no mas.
Got the evidence. Put the evidence in the car. Put the evidence in the car.
We'll take the 3-game suspension. We don't want to go into court. So there's plenty of evidence based on that. That's just common sense. We also know that Connor Stalions resigned over it. So I think there will be ramifications, but I think he should stick with Michigan and just go ahead and take the hit. I'm sure they'll still pay you the $12.5 million while you're out a year, and just enjoy being the national champion. And they'll probably still let you go to the practices and you can still coach the team. You just won't be at the games. And you ought to be used to that. You missed 6 games this year. Okay, I couldn't help that one. But anyway, that's what I would do. But I'm not an A-type personality that has to be a grinder all the time. Jim Harbaugh, look, he didn't think he did anything wrong. And in his mind, he didn't. Now, the fact this all happened under his nose, all that sign stealing stuff, that you are responsible for that. That's how it works.
I'd unfriend you.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
You don't get to say, well, I didn't know about it, therefore I'm not responsible. That's called plausible deniability, and that's not allowed in the NCAA. It's just not. And this went on for 2.5 years. Had it just been this year and it was like 6, 7 games, they would probably say, we'll hit you with something. but it's not going to be horrible. But it went on for over 2 years because Connor Stallions was there the whole time. The guy wrote a 600-page manifesto, which is phenomenal. I mean, you're talking about dedication. I'm sure many of you have written papers. A 10-page paper is daunting. A 600-page one, shoo, that's brutal. He could have got 2 or 3 doctorates out of that. Anyway, so what's he going to do? He can go to the Chargers. They've got a fantastic quarterback there. They're going to pay him great money, and he can just sidestep all of this NCAA crap. One of his big problems is he can't stand this I dot and T crossing little hall monitor crap. That's how he sees it. That's why he totally dismissed them over the cheeseburger deal, and why they suspended him for 3 games over it, because he didn't want to fool with them. He thinks it's ridiculous. So what do you think is going to happen when they start hammering over this sign stealing thing? He's going to go off on them.
Want the truth? You can't handle the truth.
Especially after just winning a national championship, he's probably going to tell them to stick it. And then they're going to get their, whatchamacallit, nawad, and really hammer him. So it's going to get real messy for him. If he could, I don't see him taking that kind of grief. He doesn't have that type of personality. So that's what I think he'll do. He should stay and be a hero, which he would be. And people would tolerate a year or 2 of, you're going to lose some scholarships and all that sort of stuff. But it's not like it's going to be the death penalty. This is not 1985. They're going to smack you on the wrist for a year or 2, and you'll probably go 9-3 or something while you're not there. You'll still have a good season. You'll go to a nice bowl game. And then when you come back, you can probably make the playoffs in year 2 or year 3. And you're making $12.5 million a year, but I just don't know that he can tolerate that. So if he does go to the NFL, that means his spot's going to be open. So somebody's going to fill that spot. I would expect it would be Brian Kelly, because Brian Kelly has sort of, I don't think he fits in down in Louisiana so good.
Just have the defense run sprints.
Good. And I think he wants to go back north. And Michigan's a very good job, and I think Brian Kelly would be very interested in it. So if that happens, then you've got all the Michigan players available in the transfer portal and all the LSU players available in the transfer portal, and you've also got to fill the LSU spot. Poor Ole Miss, because Lane Kiffin might be a really good fit there. I hate doing this to the Ole Miss fan base. They don't deserve it. They really don't. But every time a coaching position opens up, Lane Kiffin's going to be mentioned. It's just the way that it is.
You're really fucked.
He's winning, and he's known for job jumping. It's what the guy does. So anyway, we will see how this all plays out. But I'm leaning towards thinking Harbaugh takes the Chargers job. I don't think the Raiders are smart enough to hire him, and the Chargers are. So he goes there, and then, like I say, Brian Kelly or somebody along his lines will take the Michigan job. They will have to deal with some crap with the NCAA for a year or 2. That might scare Brian Kelly off, but it might not. Oh, and I did want to mention one thing. I've had people talk about this. NCAA president says Michigan earned football national title fair and square. And so Michigan's like, oh, well, it's over. It's over. Everything's fine. The NCAA said, no worries. We want it fair and square. It's all taken care of. That's not how this works. What the guy said, they earned the title fair and square because the organization took the unusual decision to share information about cheating allegations during the season to help eliminate doubts about the legitimacy of the Wolverines' title run. Baker said the NCAA decided to alert both Michigan and the Big Ten simultaneously this October after it received very compelling information that the Wolverines were involved in a broad and unusual sign-stealing scheme. Those conversations resulted in the Big Ten suspending Coach Harbaugh. That's what I'm talking about when Michigan was going to sue the Big Ten and they were about to go into court. And then the Big Ten said, well, here's the evidence. And they went, I don't want any part of that. We'll take the 3-game suspension. Because lawyers otherwise would have been glad to go in there and fight it.
Are you sure?
They also prompted Michigan analyst Connor Stallions to resign and the team to fire assistant coach Chris Partridge. Bringing those allegations into the public domain, Baker said, allowed Michigan and its opponents to adjust and erased any potential unfair advantages, meaning they could change their signs in advance so that Michigan couldn't steal their signs, which that makes perfect sense, and I can understand why they did that. That's why saying they won the title fair and square is actually somewhat accurate. Now, you could say, well, they wouldn't have been as good had they not done that for 2.5 years because of recruiting or transfer portal, all that kind of stuff. And there's an argument there, obviously. But I don't think they should have their championship vacated. I'm against that because they won it on the field and they weren't stealing signs during those games. So I say leave the trophy alone. They won, be done with it. But they are going to have to deal with the ramifications of what happened because there were very compelling evidence of a sign-stealing scheme, according to the NCAA, to the point they shared it early, which they normally would never do. The president said, I don't regret doing this because sitting on that information, giving the comprehensiveness of it, I think we would have put everyone, including Michigan, in an awful place. At the end of the day, no one believes at this point that Michigan didn't win the national title fair and square, so I think we did the right thing. So there you go. I think that's reasonable, that what they did, because they didn't want them to keep doing that through the year and then find out, oh my gosh, the NCAA knew they were stealing these signs the whole time and they let them win the national title. So that is rare for them to do that early, especially sharing information with the Big Ten. I don't think they do stuff like that. Normally they keep all that stuff under a lock and key. So very interesting. So there have been people, it's like, oh, what did you think about? Well, that's what I think about it. I think they did the right thing in breaking their norms by sharing that information so that other teams wouldn't have that unfair situation going up against Michigan. But the fact they're talking about how it's comprehensive and it was compelling, the evidence, that doesn't bode well. So anyway, there's going to be ramifications for it. And I don't think Harbaugh wants to deal with it because he does not think he did anything wrong. And here's the thing. He probably didn't know to the extent of what Connor Stallions was doing. He probably thought, gosh, that guy's good at figuring stuff out. You know, I doubt Connor Stallions went up to him and said, oh, well, you know, I'm sending scouts out ahead of our games and they're recording it all, allegedly. You know, he's not going to do that. You wouldn't think so. So I don't think Harbaugh knew. Not to that extent. So anyway, there's so many moving pieces in this. It's incredible. We will find out fairly soon because the NFL doesn't wait a long time for somebody to make a decision. There'll probably be something happen in the next week, maybe 10 days, and we'll know what Harbaugh is going to do. Again, I think he should sign the contract, stay at Michigan, deal with the ramifications, work through them. And look, you're a champ. You're a hero in Michigan. Nobody's going to get mad at you if you've got to deal with some crap for a year. They will appreciate you staying. And on top of it, what you should say, tell the Michigan folks, look, I'm staying, but here's what I need you to do for me. Help with our NIL because we're going to have some issues. I'm going to need some money to be able to get really good players. I'm doing this for you. You do that for me. And I think their NIL would be flooded with money from Michigan fans because they love the guy. And you can't hardly blame me, brought him a natty. And I can tell you right now, with all these really big-time players that are going to be available out there, I hope my Vols have got their NIL money squared away because I think we're going to have an opportunity to get some great players. And I think there's a lot of teams out there that are licking their chops going, man, there's so many great Alabama players. There's some really good Michigan players if he leaves, and some really, really good players at LSU. So there's tons of talent out there that's going to be available in this transfer portal. And people can transfer more than once. So get your NIL money ready. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Let's me to continue to cover all these big stories. Of course, my Vols, SEC, and then anything along these lines. This is national stuff. And if you've not subscribed, it's on your right, my left. Just hit that little button. I'd appreciate it. And right over here's the most recent video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy based on your viewing history. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.